George Washington. The name is synonymous with American independence, leadership, and the birth of a new nation. He is often called the father of our country, and rightly so. Washington's life is a story of courage, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to the ideals of liberty and democracy. But who was the man behind the legend? How did the experiences of his youth, his trials on the battlefield, and his time in the highest office of the land shape the leader we revere today? Join as we explore his life from his humble beginnings to his rise as a military hero and his crucial role in the founding of the United States. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, at the modest plantation known as Pope's Creek. The Washington family was part of the Virginia gentry, a class of wealthy landowners who were prominent in the colony's social and political life. George's father, Augustine Washington, was a prosperous planter. His mother, Mary Ball Washington, hailed from a family of wealth and distinction. George was the oldest of 6 children born to Augustine and Mary, though he had 2 older half-brothers from his father's first marriage. These family connections would significantly influence George's upbringing, particularly his relationship with his half-brother Lawrence, who played a pivotal role in George's life. Their father Augustine was an ambitious man. He owned several plantations and was involved in various ventures, including iron mining. His pursuits and responsibilities meant that he was often away from home, leaving young George in the care of his mother Mary, who was known for her stern and demanding nature. Despite Augustine's frequent absences, he was deeply involved in his children's education and future prospects. Augustine's influence on George was profound, instilling in him the values of hard work, discipline, and ambition. Unfortunately, Augustine died suddenly in 1743, when George was just 11 years old. This left Mary to raise her children alone. She was a strong-willed woman, known for her frugality and strictness, qualities she instilled in George. She was determined to maintain the family status and worked tirelessly to manage the household and finances after her husband's death. Her influence on George was both a source of strength and tension. While she taught him the importance of perseverance and moral integrity, her controlling nature often led to conflicts between them. Despite these challenges, Mary's guidance was instrumental in shaping George's character, preparing him for the responsibilities and challenges he would face later in life. With his father's sudden death, young George did not receive the same level of formal education that might have been expected for someone of his social standing. Despite this, George was a diligent and curious student. He learned the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic from a local school in Fredericksburg. His education was heavily influenced by practical knowledge, including mathematics and surveying, which were critical skills for land management in the Virginia colony. After his father's death, George developed a close relationship with his older half-brother Lawrence, who was 14 years older than George and had served in the British Navy during the War of Jenkins' Ear, a conflict between Britain and Spain. Lawrence's military experience and worldliness made him a role model for George, who looked up to his older brother with great admiration. He played a key role in George's early professional life. Through Lawrence's connections with the Fairfax family, George was introduced to Lord Thomas Fairfax, the wealthy and influential proprietor of the northern neck of Virginia, a vast tract of land stretching from the Potomac River to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Lord Fairfax recognized George's potential and offered him a position as a surveyor at the age of 17. As a surveyor, George began mapping out the vast wilderness of the northern neck. From July 1749 until November 1750, Washington served as county surveyor for Culpeper, Virginia. This experience was transformative for the young Washington. Surveying required not only technical skills in mathematics and geometry, but also the ability to navigate and survive in the rugged frontier. George's work took him deep into the Virginia wilderness, where he learned the geography of the land, interacted with various settlers, and gained a first-hand understanding of the complexities of frontier life. In 1752, when George was just 20 years old, tragedy struck with the death of his beloved half-brother Lawrence. Lawrence had been suffering from tuberculosis and sought treatment in the Caribbean, but his condition worsened, and he passed away at Mount Vernon. Lawrence's death was a devastating blow to him. He not only lost a brother, but also a mentor and father figure. His death left George as the head of the Washington family, a significant responsibility for a young man in his early 20s. He inherited the Mount Vernon estate, a move that significantly elevated his social standing and provided him with a stable base from which to pursue his future ambitions. In 1753, at the age of 21, George was sworn in as a major in the Virginia militia. This was a critical period in colonial America, as the British and French were vying for control of the Ohio Valley, a region of immense strategic and economic importance. The French had begun constructing a series of forts to assert their claim over the territory, which the British also claimed. Virginia's governor, Robert Dinwiddie, recognized the need to assert British interests in the region and chose the young ambitious Washington to deliver an ultimatum to the French, demanding their withdrawal from the Ohio Valley. George embarked on a perilous journey through the wilderness to deliver Dinwiddie's message to the French commander at Fort Le Boeuf. The journey, filled with hardships and dangers, provided him with his first taste of military and diplomatic responsibilities. Although the French politely refused to vacate the territory, George's mission was a success in terms of gaining invaluable experience in wilderness survival and dealing with Native American tribes, some of whom were aligned with the French. The following year, George was promoted to lieutenant colonel and given command of a regiment with orders to build a fort at the strategically vital forks of the Ohio, the site where the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers meet to form the Ohio River. However, by the time he and his men arrived, they discovered that the French had already established Fort Duquesne at this location. Undeterred, George established a makeshift post named Fort Necessity, about 40 miles away. In May 1754, George received intelligence that a French detachment was encamped nearby. Seizing the initiative, he led a surprise attack on the French, resulting in the skirmish known as the Battle of Jumonville Glen. The engagement was brief but significant. George's forces killed or captured most of the French party, including their leader, Ensign Joseph Coulon de Jumonville, who was killed. This skirmish is often considered the spark that ignited the French and Indian War. The Battle of Jumonville Glen, though a victory, had serious consequences. It provoked a strong French response, and George soon found himself in a precarious position. The French, seeking retribution, launched an assault on Fort Necessity. On July 3, 1754, George and his men, numbering about 400, were attacked by a much larger French and Native American force led by Jumonville's brother. The engagement, known as the Battle of Fort Necessity, was a disaster for George. The fort, hastily constructed in a low-lying area, was poorly situated and vulnerable. Heavy rain turned the battlefield into a quagmire, and George's men, exhausted and demoralized, were unable to mount an effective defense. After a day of intense fighting, George, recognizing the hopelessness of his situation, agreed to a French offer of surrender. The terms, written in French and poorly translated to him, included an admission of responsibility for Jumonville's death, which he later claimed he did not fully understand. The surrender at Fort Necessity marked the only time in George's military career that he would surrender to an enemy force. Despite the defeat, his conduct during the engagement garnered attention in both the colonies and Britain. His bravery under fire and his willingness to take responsibility, even in the face of overwhelming odds, were noted by his superiors. Though his first command had ended in failure, George had demonstrated qualities of leadership and determination that would define his future career. Undeterred by the setback at Fort Necessity, George continued to serve in the Virginia militia. In 1755, he joined the expedition of British General Edward Braddock, who was sent to dislodge the French from Fort Duquesne. He served as a volunteer aide to Braddock, eager to learn from the experienced British officer and to redeem his earlier defeat. The Braddock expedition, however, would prove to be another disaster. As the British forces advanced through the wilderness, they were ambushed by a combined French and Native American force near the Monongahela River on July 9, 1755. The British troops, unaccustomed to fighting in the dense forests of North America, were thrown into disarray. General Braddock was mortally wounded, and the British forces suffered heavy casualties. Amidst the chaos, George emerged as a key figure. He displayed remarkable courage, rallying the survivors and organizing a retreat. Though he narrowly escaped death, several horses were shot from under him, and his coat was riddled with bullet holes, he managed to lead the remnants of Braddock's army to safety. His conduct during the retreat earned him widespread praise and further cemented his reputation as a capable and fearless leader. Following the Braddock expedition, George was appointed colonel of the Virginia Regiment and charged with defending the frontier from French and Native American attacks. Over the next few years, he faced numerous challenges, including supply shortages, difficulties in recruiting and training troops, and the constant threat of attack. Despite these obstacles, he worked tirelessly to improve the defenses of Virginia's western frontier. During this period, George gained valuable experience in the practicalities of military command. He learned the importance of logistics, the necessity of discipline, and the value of building strong relationships with both his men and the local population. He also gained a deep understanding of the complexities of frontier warfare, where conventional European tactics often proved ineffective. After the French and Indian War, George resigned his military commission from the Virginia Regiment in December of 1758. He then returned to civilian life at his family estate, Mount Vernon. The war had been both physically and mentally taxing, but it had also established him as a respected leader. He was eager to settle down and focus on managing his estate, which had been largely neglected during his years of military service. He quickly immersed himself in the responsibilities of a planter and businessman. He expanded the estate, improving the agriculture and increasing production. His experiences during the war, particularly the logistics of supplying and managing troops, had given him valuable insights into the importance of efficient land management and trade. Under his stewardship, Mount Vernon began to thrive. During this time, George was also considering his personal future. At 27, he was a bachelor, and the question of marriage was on his mind. In early 1758, he met Martha Custis, a wealthy widow from the Tidewater region of Virginia. Martha, only 26 years old, was already one of the wealthiest women in the colonies, having inherited significant wealth from her late husband, Daniel Parke Custis. The meeting between George and Martha would prove to be a turning point in his life. Martha's wealth was certainly a factor in his interest, as it would allow him to secure his social and economic standing. However, their correspondence reveals a genuine affection that quickly developed between the two. He admired Martha's intelligence, warmth, and strong sense of duty to her family. She, in turn, was drawn to his leadership qualities, honesty, and dedication. Their courtship was brief, and the two were married on January 6, 1759, at Martha's estate, the White House in New Kent County, Virginia. The wedding was a grand affair, attended by many of Virginia's leading families. Martha's two children from her previous marriage, John and Martha Custis, were also present, and George took on the role of their stepfather with care and responsibility. The marriage brought George immense wealth and social standing, but it also provided him with a stable and supportive home life. Martha moved to Mount Vernon, where she played a crucial role in managing the household and supporting George's various endeavors. Together, they created a partnership that would become the foundation of his future successes. His life as a planter and landowner flourished during these years. He expanded Mount Vernon from 2,000 to 8,000 acres and diversified its agricultural output. He also began breeding horses, cultivating new crops like wheat, all of which contributed to the estate's prosperity. His reputation grew as a skilled and innovative planter, further solidifying his status among Virginia's elite. Even as he embraced his role as a civilian and husband, George could not entirely escape public life. His leadership during the war had not gone unnoticed, and he would soon be elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses, where he began to involve himself in local political issues. By the mid-18th century, the bond between the American colonies and Britain had begun to fray. The British government, reeling from the financial strain of the French and Indian War, sought to recoup its losses by imposing a series of taxes on its American colonies. The rationale was simple. The colonies had benefited from British military protection and should therefore share in the costs. These new measures were met with widespread anger and resentment across the Atlantic, as many colonists felt that they were being unjustly taxed without a voice in the British Parliament. The first significant flashpoint in this growing conflict was the Stamp Act of 1765. This act imposed a direct tax on a wide range of paper goods, including newspapers, pamphlets, and legal documents. The reaction was swift and fierce, with colonists viewing it as a direct assault on their rights as Englishmen. George's political engagement deepened during this period. In 1758, he had been elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses, the first representative legislative body in the American colonies. While his initial focus was on local and regional matters, the escalating tension between Britain and the colonies soon drew his attention to the larger issues at stake. The Stamp Act, followed by the Townshend Acts of 1767, which levied taxes on imported goods like tea, glass, and paper, further fueled Washington's growing concerns. George, like many of his contemporaries, viewed these acts as an overreach of British power. He threw his support behind the growing movement to boycott British goods, a tactic that aimed to apply economic pressure on Britain while demonstrating the colony's capacity for unified action. This period marked a turning point for him, as he came to believe firmly in the colony's right to self-govern and resistance to unjust laws. His stance was a precursor to his eventual support for full-scale rebellion against British rule, a rebellion that would soon ignite across the continent. The tensions reached a boiling point on December 16, 1773, with the Boston Tea Party. In protest against the Tea Act, which allowed the British East India Company to sell tea in the colonies without paying the usual taxes, a group of colonists, disguised as Mohawk Indians, boarded 3 British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. This bold act of defiance escalated the conflict, setting the stage for the revolutionary struggle that lay ahead. In 1774, tensions between the American colonies and Britain had reached a breaking point. The colonies were growing increasingly frustrated with British policies, particularly the Intolerable Acts, which were seen as punitive measures in response to the Boston Tea Party. As unrest grew, the colonies decided it was time to unite and take collective action. This led to the convening of the First Continental Congress in September of 1774 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. George, already a respected figure for his military service during the French and Indian War, was among the delegates sent by Virginia. Although he was not a prominent voice in the debates, his presence was significant. George's commitment to the colonial cause was evident, and he played a key role in the discussions that shaped the colony's response to British policies. The First Continental Congress brought together representatives from 12 of the 13 colonies, excluding Georgia. The delegates had diverse viewpoints, ranging from those who sought reconciliation with Britain to those who were prepared to take more drastic measures. Despite their differences, they managed to agree on a unified course of action. The Congress endorsed the Suffolk Resolves, which called for civil disobedience against the Intolerable Acts, and agreed to a boycott of British goods through the Continental Association. George's experience at the First Continental Congress solidified his reputation as a leader committed to the defense of American liberties. Though the Congress sought to avoid open conflict, the groundwork was laid for the Revolutionary War. George returned to Virginia with a clearer sense of the escalating crisis and a stronger commitment to the colonial cause. In April of 1775, the conflict that had been brewing for years finally erupted into violence. The battles of Lexington and Concord marked the beginning of the American Revolution. These battles began when British troops were dispatched from Boston to seize colonial military supplies stored in Concord, Massachusetts. On their way, they encountered a group of colonial militiamen in Lexington. In the early morning hours, the two sides faced off on the Lexington Green. Amidst the tense standoff, a shot was fired. No one knows by whom, but it became known as the shot heard round the world. This moment marked the first exchange of fire between British soldiers and American colonists, setting off a chain of events that would lead to a full-scale war for independence. Following the skirmish in Lexington, the British continued to Concord, where they were met with stronger resistance from the colonists. The British were forced to retreat to Boston, suffering significant casualties along the way as colonial militias harassed them throughout their march. These encounters galvanized the colonies, uniting them in their resistance against British rule. In the wake of these events, the Second Continental Congress convened in May of 1775 in Philadelphia. Unlike the First Continental Congress, which had sought to address grievances and avoid war, the Second Continental Congress found itself grappling with the realities of an armed conflict. The delegates faced the daunting task of organizing a war effort and debating the colony's future relationship with Britain. One of the Congress's most significant decisions was to appoint George as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He was seen as the ideal choice to lead the colonial forces because of his leadership and commitment during the First Continental Congress. His appointment marked a crucial step in the colony's transition from resistance to revolution. One of George's first significant successes came during the Siege of Boston. For months, the Continental Army had kept the British troops under General Thomas Gage confined to the city. In March of 1776, after acquiring artillery from Fort Ticonderoga, George orchestrated a daring plan to fortify Dorchester Heights, overlooking the city. The move forced the British to evacuate Boston, marking his first major victory of the war. This triumph was a morale boost for the Continental Army and the Patriot cause, proving that the Americans could stand up to the British forces. However, the war was far from won. The British soon regrouped and set their sights on New York City, a crucial strategic location. George, anticipating this move, fortified positions on Long Island to defend the city. The British, however, executed a well-planned flanking maneuver, attacking the American forces from an unexpected direction. The Continental Army, inexperienced and outnumbered, was overwhelmed. Despite their valiant efforts, the Americans suffered heavy losses, with more than 1,000 captured. George, realizing the dire situation, ordered a nighttime retreat across the East River to Manhattan, successfully evacuating his troops without further losses. The Battle of Long Island was a significant defeat for the Americans, but George's strategic retreat preserved his army. This loss underscored the challenges the Continental Army faced and the resilience needed to continue the fight for independence. The loss of New York City was a severe blow, and the subsequent retreats through New Jersey left George's army demoralized and on the brink of collapse. But he refused to give up. In a bold move on the night of December 25, 1776, he led his troops across the icy Delaware River to launch a surprise attack on the Hessian forces in Trenton, New Jersey. Despite the harsh winter conditions, his troops successfully crossed the river and launched a surprise attack on the Hessian garrison at Trenton on the morning of December 26. The victory was a crucial morale booster for the American cause. George's ability to execute such a daring plan under extreme conditions showcased his strategic brilliance and commitment to the cause. Following the success at Trenton, he pressed his advantage and scored another significant victory at the Battle of Princeton on January 3, 1777. These victories not only reinvigorated American morale, but also demonstrated the effectiveness of George's leadership and strategic acumen. The impact of these victories was profound. They revitalized American confidence and proved that the Continental Army could stand up to British forces. This newfound confidence also played a crucial role in the subsequent American triumph at the Battle of Saratoga in October of 1777. The decisive victory at Saratoga was a turning point in the war, leading to a crucial alliance with France. The victory at Saratoga convinced France of the viability of the American cause and led to the signing of the Franco-American Alliance in 1778. The alliance with France had a profound impact on the war effort. George's diplomatic skills were crucial in managing relations with French commanders and ensuring the effective integration of French support into the American strategy. One of the most notable figures in this alliance was the Marquis de Lafayette, a young French nobleman who became one of his closest allies. Lafayette's enthusiasm and expertise were invaluable. He played a key role in training American troops and providing strategic counsel. George and Lafayette developed a deep mutual respect and friendship, which strengthened the American effort and contributed to the eventual victory. In the later stages of the war, British strategy shifted towards the southern colonies, hoping to leverage Loyalist support and disrupt American supply lines. This presented new challenges for George and the Continental Army. He coordinated closely with his commanders, including General Nathanael Greene, who was assigned to lead the Southern campaign. Greene's strategies in the South, including the use of guerrilla tactics and avoiding large-scale engagements, proved effective in weakening British forces. One of the standout victories in the Southern campaign was the Battle of Cowpens, fought on January 17, 1781. American forces, under the command of Brigadier General Daniel Morgan, delivered a decisive defeat to British troops led by Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Tarleton. This victory was instrumental in turning the tide in the South and weakening British control over the region. The successes in the South, combined with George's strategic coordination, set the stage for the final act of the Revolutionary War. By the summer of 1781, the Revolutionary War was nearing its climax. The British, under General Cornwallis, had taken up a strong defensive position in Yorktown, Virginia. George saw an opportunity to deliver a decisive blow to British forces. George, along with French General Rochambeau, meticulously planned the siege of Yorktown. Coordinating with the French Navy, which had effectively blockaded the harbor, George's forces began a methodical siege of the British positions. The siege of Yorktown, which began in September of 1781, was a testament to George's strategic acumen and leadership. The Americans and French working together effectively cut off British supplies and reinforcements. The relentless siege forced Cornwallis into a corner, leading to his surrender on October 19, 1781. The surrender at Yorktown was a defining moment in the war. It marked the end of major military operations and laid the groundwork for American independence. The victory had a profound impact on the British government, leading to negotiations that would eventually result in the Treaty of Paris being signed in September of 1783, officially ending the Revolutionary War and recognizing American independence. George's leadership and the successful alliance with France were crucial in achieving this historic outcome. His ability to navigate the complex dynamics of war and diplomacy played a pivotal role in securing the future of the United States. With the war concluded, his role as a military leader came to an end. After 8 grueling years of leading the Continental Army to victory in the War for Independence, George returned to civilian life in December of 1783. After resigning his commission, he retired to his beloved estate at Mount Vernon. Despite his deep desire for peace and tranquility, his return to civilian life was not to last. His initial reluctance to re-enter public life reflected his yearning for a quiet retirement. Yet, the challenges facing the fledgling United States were mounting, and his leadership was needed once more. The Articles of Confederation, the nation's first governing document, had significant weaknesses. The central government was too weak to address economic instability, interstate disputes, and lack of cohesive foreign policy. The growing realization that a stronger central government was needed became apparent, prompting calls for a more robust framework to govern the United States. George's concern for the future of the country led him to reluctantly agree to participate in efforts to address these challenges. The call for a new constitutional framework would soon set the stage for one of the most significant events in American history, the Constitutional Convention of 1787. In May of that year, delegates from 12 of the 13 states convened in Philadelphia for the convention. George was elected as the president of the convention, a role that would be instrumental in shaping the new government. His presence lent immediate legitimacy to the proceedings and helped guide the debates toward productive outcomes. Although George's leadership was crucial during the convention, he remained largely in the background. His steady hand and influence were felt throughout the deliberations. The debates were intense, with delegates such as James Madison and Alexander Hamilton grappling with issues ranging from representation and federal powers to the balance between state and national authority. The convention ultimately produced the U.S. Constitution, a document designed to address the deficiencies of the Articles of Confederation. George's support was pivotal in achieving consensus on the new framework. His endorsement of the Constitution played a significant role in securing its ratification by the states, cementing the foundation for the United States government. The new Constitution established a federal system of government with a stronger central authority, a separation of powers, and a system of checks and balances. George's role in the convention was a testament to his commitment to ensuring a stable and effective government for the emerging nation. In 1789, George Washington was unanimously elected as the first president of the United States, even though he didn't run for president. This was a testament to the immense respect and trust he had earned during the Revolutionary War and the Constitutional Convention. Reluctant but driven by duty, he accepted the presidency, knowing that his actions would set precedents for the new nation's future. During his first term, he faced the daunting task of shaping the executive branch and establishing the federal government's authority. One of his significant achievements was the creation of the first presidential cabinet, bringing together key advisors like Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury, and Henry Knox as Secretary of War. This cabinet became an essential mechanism for advising the president and implementing federal policies. He also focused on stabilizing the nation's economy, which was in disarray following the Revolutionary War. He supported Alexander Hamilton's financial plan, which included the federal assumption of state debts, the establishment of a national bank, and the introduction of tariffs to protect American industries. These measures were controversial but crucial in laying the foundation for the country's economic stability and creditworthiness. Another significant achievement was the passage of the Judiciary Act of 1789, which established the federal court system and the position of Attorney General. This act ensured that the Constitution's legal framework could be effectively implemented, creating a judiciary capable of balancing the powers of the executive and legislative branches. George's first term also saw the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, being ratified in 1791. These amendments guaranteed essential freedoms, such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press, and became a cornerstone of American democracy. Throughout his first term, his leadership was marked by a commitment to neutrality in foreign affairs, domestic stability, and the establishment of a strong, functioning federal government. His achievements set the course for the nation's development and solidified his legacy as a leader who put the country's interests above his own. In 1792, as George's first term as president drew to a close, the young nation once again turned to him for leadership. Despite his desire to retire to Mount Vernon and enjoy the tranquility of private life, he was persuaded to serve a second term. His reluctance stemmed from a deep sense of exhaustion, both physical and emotional, as well as a concern that his continued presidency might set a precedent for a lifetime appointment, which he strongly opposed. Nevertheless, understanding the fragile state of the nation and the need for continuity, he agreed to serve again out of a sense of duty and responsibility. On February 13, 1793, a joint session of Congress counted the Electoral College votes from the second presidential election, and George Washington was unanimously elected again. During his second term, he faced significant challenges, both domestic and foreign. One of his most notable achievements was his handling of the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794. Farmers in western Pennsylvania violently protested a federal excise tax on whiskey, which they saw as unjust. George, determined to uphold federal authority, personally led troops to suppress the rebellion, demonstrating the power of the federal government to enforce its laws. This was a crucial moment in establishing the rule of law in the new republic. On the foreign front, he navigated the complexities of European politics, particularly the ongoing conflict between Britain and France. He issued the Proclamation of Neutrality in 1793, firmly declaring that the United States would not take sides in the war. This decision was critical in maintaining peace and stability for the fledgling nation, allowing it to grow without being drawn into the conflicts of powerful European nations. By the end of his second term, George was ready to step down, setting another vital precedent: the peaceful transfer of power. His decision not to seek a third term underscored his commitment to the principles of republicanism and cemented his legacy as a leader who prioritized the nation's long-term stability over personal power. George Washington's farewell address, delivered in 1796, was a profound and influential document that set the tone for American political culture. In his address, he announced his decision to retire from public life, reflecting his deep belief that a leader should not cling to power but rather serve as a steward of democratic principles. His address was published in newspapers and widely circulated, offering a chance for Americans to absorb his reflections on the nation's progress and future challenges. He used the occasion to highlight several key warnings and advice for his fellow citizens, underscoring the importance of national unity and the dangers of political factions. He cautioned against the divisive nature of political parties, which he believed could lead to factionalism and weaken the nation's unity. He argued that parties might prioritize their own interests over the common good, undermining the stability of the government. Additionally, he warned against the dangers of entangling alliances with foreign powers, advising the nation to maintain a policy of neutrality to preserve its independence and avoid being drawn into external conflicts. His farewell address, laden with wisdom and foresight, provided a framework for the future direction of the United States and has continued to be a touchstone for American political thought, reflecting his enduring impact on the republic he helped to shape. After his presidency, George retired to Mount Vernon, seeking a quieter life after years of public service. His retirement was marked by a renewed focus on managing his estate and enjoying the company of his family. Unfortunately, his final years were marred by declining health. In late 1799, he developed a severe throat infection and his condition rapidly deteriorated, leading to difficulty breathing and severe discomfort. On December 14, 1799, he passed away at Mount Vernon. His death was met with profound national mourning. His passing marked the end of an era for the young republic, and his loss was felt deeply across the nation. The outpouring of grief from the American people was a testament to George Washington's impact on the nation. His death was widely regarded as a significant moment in American history, symbolizing the end of a revolutionary chapter and the consolidation of the country's identity. As we conclude our journey through the life of George Washington, the father of our country, we are reminded of the extraordinary impact this man had on the founding of the United States. From his early years in Virginia to his pivotal role in the Revolutionary War and his leadership as the first president, Washington's life is a testament to vision, courage, and dedication. His contributions were instrumental in shaping the course of American history. His leadership during the Revolutionary War was crucial in securing independence, while his role in the Constitutional Convention helped lay the groundwork for a robust and enduring system of government. As the first president of the United States, he set precedents that continue to guide the nation to this day. Let us remember him not just as a historical figure, but as a symbol of the enduring ideals that define the United States. His life teaches us that leadership is not just about position, but about character and commitment to the greater good. In honoring his legacy, we can strive to embody the principles he championed and contribute to a future that upholds the values he helped establish. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of George Washington's remarkable journey. May his example continue to inspire us all to serve our country with dedication, integrity, and a shared vision for a better tomorrow. If you enjoyed this deep dive into his remarkable life, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more detailed explorations of the people and events that shaped our world. Don't forget to hit the like button and the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring the echoes of the past.